He joins us now. We will get to...
I'd like to weigh in on that.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, it's interesting. Yesterday it was reported that a bunch of us sent a letter to the new administration regarding Ukraine and regarding Russia's activity on the eastern border of Ukraine and Crimea. And again, this is another example where America, I think, has not played the leadership role that we've traditionally played, and the consequences have been terrible, not just for Ukraine, but for other countries watching, particularly in Eastern Europe, and wondering, you know, where is NATO, where is America? So I do think we need to stand up and be counted.
What is the cost in terms of American leadership? Last 2 years, turning a blind eye to what happened in Ukraine and turning a blind eye to what still happens every day in Syria.
Well, and think of the South China Sea, where on a coral reef we now have an Air Force base, and the other countries in the region looking at us and saying, is anybody going to tell China that's actually international waters, that's not yours? So it's the Mideast, it's Syria, it's what's going on today, certainly in Iraq, and I don't know what the costs are ultimately, Joe, but I do think that when President George W. Bush left and he said if we don't deal with ISIS and keep them out of Iraq, and if we don't have the kind of withdrawal from Iraq that enables us to keep some special forces there, some trainers, that it's likely that troops will have to go back again, and that's what we're seeing. And so there are troops on the ground, and there may have to be more. So that's one of the costs, certainly.
Senator,
Vienna.
I just quickly wanted to ask you, Senator, if you believe that the president-elect shares your views and compassion on this issue and the plight of people in Syria and in Ukraine.
I hope so. I mean, I know he met or spoke with President Poroshenko and agreed to, to visit with President Poroshenko, who's the president of Ukraine. And I think, he's learning more about some parts of the world like that, where the Obama administration philosophy, which, as you recall, famously early on, as staffers said, leading from behind, has not made the world safer, but rather more dangerous and volatile.
I wanted to ask you about Russia, because there's a number of your colleagues on the Hill, senators, who are now saying they're going to look into the role that Russia may have played in meddling in our elections, perhaps the hacking of the DNC. There's some other rumors about hacking of our election system. Are you supportive of that effort? What do you hope is uncovered by there? How would you see it playing out?
Well, sure, I'm supportive of looking into it. And you may know that in the defense bill that was just passed yesterday in the Senate, has already passed the House, now President, there is language regarding disinformation campaigns, and specifically reorganizing the U.S. government so we can better respond to that. Right now, other than Radio Free Europe, we really don't have much of an effort to try to counteract what's going on around the world. Some of it's Russia, some of it's China, some of it's other countries. But if you go to Eastern Europe as an example, much of what they're concerned about is the disinformation and the propaganda. And I do think we need to be much more responsive to that as a government, and particularly online, where we're not sophisticated and other countries are. So I think there's a number of things we could do. Certainly investigating any foreign country's interference in our election system is important. Yeah. But also having the U.S. itself be able to push back against disinformation and get the truth out there to people all over the world.
Senator, you hold the now late Senator John Glenn's Senate seat. How do you even begin to describe his legacy?
Oh, gosh. Well, first, very humbling to hold his seat. I called him a couple weeks ago and asked him to walk down the Senate aisle with me during my swearing in on January 3rd. Sadly, he won't be there. But what a great honor to hold this seat. Look, he was an American icon. His life is the history of our country in many respects. I'm old enough, as you are not, Mika, to understand what happened back when he splashed down with Freedom 7, and it changed the dynamic at that time, the Soviet Union, and the United States was in a space race, and the first person to orbit the globe. And you recall he was about 40 years old at the time, and he came to Congress to speak to a joint session. Imagine that. That's what kind of a hero he was. But his life before that was heroic. He was a fighter pilot, highly decorated. After that, of course, a United States Senator. I worked with him when he was in the Senate. I was in the House. I was on his board at the Glenn School, now the Glenn College at Ohio State, which was his great pride in his later years. So an amazing guy and an incredible history.
Well, and we are and so much better for his service to this country on so many fronts, and we're blessed for that. And we thank you so much for your service to the country, and thank you for being with us this morning.
Portman.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Always great to be on with you guys. Take care.
And it is Friday. That does it for us
Thank
this
God.
morning. Have a great weekend, everybody. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Beyond.
It's been a pleasure, guys.
Thank you.